Welcome to Blend's Localization Leaders series, where we interview industry leaders who are paving the way for advances in localization through their work. In this episode, we're joined by Debora Cohen, AppsFlyer's head of localization. AppsFlyer is an analytics and attribution platform for mobile marketing. Thank you so much for joining us, Debora. I'm so happy that we could have you on. Could you start by telling us about your career path and your journey to becoming AppsFlyer's head of localization?
Sure. So very nice to meet you, Corinne. I'm very happy to be here. First of all, thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Debora, and I'm the head of localization at AppsFlyer. A little bit about myself. I'll do like a very brief summary. I'm born and raised in Spain. From a very young age, I moved to the UK. So I lived between, London and Manchester, where I completed my studies. I did translation and interpreting, and as part of my studies, I also went to Italy. It was a very interesting experience altogether. And then I moved to Israel 12 years ago, and I've been living here since then. I live in Tel Aviv. I joined AppsFlyer's, I think it was like almost 6 years ago. And it's been quite a ride, I have to say. It's been quite interesting.
Wow, amazing. So I guess we can hear a little more about AppsFlyer and localization there. What role does localization play at AppsFlyer, and how is your team structured?
Actually, what we do here at AppsFlyer, it's quite interesting, because I like to define like localization as a service provider, right? And in fact, like we actually provide services to the whole organization. And what do I mean by that? I'm actually like sitting in the marketing department, but we also give support to the CSM team, the sales department.
Right.
I also manage like the localization efforts for KB, for knowledge base, for product, for UI.
Wow.
We also have a learning and development team that just joined our team like very recently, like a couple of months ago, and we also give support to the team. So it's a very active role within the organization, very busy, very dynamic. There's always like loads of stuff going on, so
I'm
quite
sure.
interesting, I have to say.
Wow, sounds amazing. So what would you say is AppsFlyer's greatest localization strength?
I think, and this is obviously it's a personal of opinion. It's the fact that we are very, very well organized. And what do I mean by that? Like we have very like robust and strong processes. Because by the end of the day, like localization is all about like logistics and operations. There's a lot of like tools that we need to use, and if we don't have like the right workflows and processes, is very difficult, to handle like, the amount of volume that we handle every day. So, we have a very good structure, very well organized. We use Asana. We have very clear guidelines and instructions, and we use templates. And, because we work with so many different stakeholders within the organization, we have to make sure that everyone understands like how we work, even though if they don't really know us. So, very strong processes, I would define it as the best successful localization.
Yeah, good foundation. I think it's very easy for localization to become a mess. So absolutely, that's a good strength. Did you find that there were any markets that were particularly challenging to break into?
In my case specifically, I love working with obviously all the regions. Some of them are easier to work with, and some of them are a bit more challenging. And I guess that's because of the culture. Maybe like the cultural differences. Sometimes it could be also like the time difference. You have also like some regions that are like really far away from your mentality, the way that you work. They have like completely different processes, and they have different ways of working. So in any case, I would say, the cultural differences is like, what sometimes make it a little bit more challenging than others. But in general, I have to say that we found a very good balance. within the company, and like the different team members and the different offices, because we have like 20 offices all over the world. We're very close with the whole team. We have to, like the headquarters is here in Israel, but we do have a marketing team in each office. So we have to make sure that the communication is open, is transparent, that we're on the same page. And so far, so good.
That's great. Yeah, especially with the localization team. Amazing. Do you have any advice for either localization professionals, fellow professionals, or for people who are interested in entering the field?
Yeah, I mean, having been in this profession for so long, like it's going to be like nearly 14 years now. Yeah, I have a few like ideas from the top of my head, and people might think it's kind of like obvious what I'm gonna say, but it's like it's just so important. Like you really need to be like very aware of the cultural differences. Okay, why am I mentioning this? Is because you just like people take for granted like other cultures, and you just think that because something works very well in an English speaking country, straight away it's going to work also like in GCR or in Japan or like in Thailand or wherever you're focusing your effort in, right? And it doesn't necessarily work like that, right? So for me, like the first piece of advice that I give to people is like, make sure you understand like who is your target audience. Okay, and I mean it like from the cultural point of view, because again, not necessarily what works in English translates straight away to the relevant language. So that is like one super important one. Networking, it's also like something very essential that this applies to all professions. It's not just for localization, but because like it's such a small niche, we all know each other. That's why it's also like very important to make sure that we attend conferences, that we attend online events, especially like during these days that we're still like working on this hybrid mode. So make sure that you're connected to people, and that you kind of like you're in touch, and you know what's going on. And one more thing I want to highlight, though, there are like so many things that come to my mind. It's always be like, try to be up to date of like what's going on. The world is like running, right? The world is going like really fast, and there are so many advancements like AI, for example. If you want, we can talk about it later on.
Absolutely.
You need to be like up to date, and you need to know what's going on. You need to know how to utilize all these like new resources and new technologies. And so make sure that you are like that what's outside, and that you will be able to make the best use out of it.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. We'll touch on AI soon. Before that, I want to ask more advice just from maybe the perspective for a business. Do you have any advice for a global brand, or a brand becoming global, maybe, that wants to build a localization team for the first time? It's kind of a unmarked territory that you don't really know what to do yet.
It's a very tricky question, right? Because you don't have a rule, you don't have a set rule for everyone. Like it depends on many different factors. It depends on the size of the business. It depends on the size of the the company. How many markets do they have? What's the ARR? Like you need to do a lot of research before you start understanding what the localization needs will be. So what works really well for AppsFlyer, it might not work at all for the company that works next door, or even like the competition, right? Because the deals are different, the products are different, even the language. Even I'll tell you about like AppsFlyer, for example. It's a very we deal about like analytics and mobile attribution. It's all about like very technical content, right? SDKs, APIs, very technical stuff that you also need to find like very relevant and specific translators to do this type of job. So this question, it's always like super tricky, because you will have to look into every single organization, their needs, and what will be required. There's no such a straightforward answer, I'm afraid.
That's fair. That's totally fair. So we can jump back to AI, and obviously it's a really big deal in our industry. how does AI impact your day-to-day specifically as a localization professional? And maybe do you have any tips on how to use it effectively for localization processes?
AI is like a broad topic here, right? It's like, where do we start from?
Yeah,
It's like the biggest
yeah.
advancement in the past year, I would say, right? And again, my personal opinion, right? It's like everything in life. You have like the positive and the negative side of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you have to take advantage of, whatever it is out there. You need to make sure that you're
Hmm.
utilizing it like as best as possible. And this is what we are trying to do. We do use it because we do use a TMS at the moment, and it has like some features that contains AI features and things that we can use with it. But then at the same time, people who are not very involved and they are not very familiar with localization, and sometimes it happens to like high management, they just think that with AI you can just replace human beings,
Right.
and the in-house translators that we have, and they think that they can do all the job. And I do have to say something about that. While AI is fantastic and it's a great tool, and I 100% that we should all be utilizing it, that doesn't mean that you can replace humans with this new technology that just came out, and I'll tell you why. For us specifically in AppsFlyer, localization is very complex. Well, so it's always complex for all the companies, but for us it's super complex because
Yeah.
it's a lot of like, as I mentioned before, processes, and we use a lot of technologies, we use a lot of different tools, we have so many different integrations, and then we have design as well, and then we work with so many stakeholders, which means that the translation part of the work itself, I would say it's only like 20 or 30% of the overall work that my team does.
Yeah.
So can we use AI for this 20, 30%? 100%. It's actually, it's speeding the
The
translation
process.
process, right? It's like
Yeah.
you save like 50% of your time. But that's it, that's only like that part of the process. Then you need to remember that you need to QA, you need to actually implement sometimes the content into like the right tools. And this is something that a machine won't be able to do, at least like the
At
features
least
that
not
we have
yet.
today. At least not yet. We don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen tomorrow with all this advancement. So you need to take it with a pinch of salt. Can we use it 100%? Are we using it? Yes, of course, but it doesn't necessarily replace the work that a human person can actually do.
Yeah, it's a balance. Balance. Okay, amazing. So we can move on now to our rapid fire questions. So it's just like quick, short answers. Um, no pressure. So, firstly, what's your favorite language?
Italian.
Mm, me too, actually. And your favorite localization tool?
Currently is I phrase TMS.
Nice. And what's your favorite place that you've traveled to?
Oh, this is difficult. It's how can you possibly pick one? I would say Trieste. It's a place where I lived
Ah,
a while ago.
wow, nice, nice. And what's the best localization advice you've received?
This is also a tricky one. You get a lot. I think the networking one. It's like be connected.
Mm. What's the most successful market you've invested in?
GCR.
Nice. What is your localization nightmare?
Oh, okay. So I need to expand here my answer because I'm a
Okay.
very organized person. So for me, the worst is like when they don't give me enough time to work on a project.
Mm,
Um, yeah,
yeah, tight deadline.
I said
And who is your localization role model?
it's actually also a Spanish girl. She's also like from the south of Spain. We have like very similar background and stuff. It's Cristina Tibeño. I
Hmm.
don't know if you know her, but
I don't know her actually.
she's been in the industry also like for many years. She's fantastic.
Great, amazing. And so lastly, which brand is your localization crush? Another brand whose localization you admire.
I think it's Netflix. They're doing an amazing job. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. I have to agree. Okay, so great. So before we go, are there any localization projects you have coming up at AppsFlyer that you want us to look out for? Anything that's not confidential?
It's not really confidential. It's just like we're working on like 1,000 projects right now. We're currently like cooking them, so it's I can't share much information, but all I can tell is like H1, it's coming strong and yes, strong with
Big
loads of
plans.
projects, big plans, huge amount of projects in the pipeline, and we're very excited about it.
Wow. Okay, so looking forward to seeing that. And thank you again, Deborah, for taking the time to speak with us, for joining us again on Local Leaders and covering some different topics. It was really, really nice speaking with you and finally meeting you.
Thank you, Corinne. It's been a pleasure.